consent form has, but the people don't sign it. So it's sort of like by, clicking here to do the survey, you're agreeing to participate. And that's why we have a template. So the things where that you really have to worry about are things where you're putting a lot of background information, or you're talking about your procedures, where you might be talking about something that people wouldn't know what you're doing. So you just have to try and explain it. But we go in and tell people, like I reviewed a study that was being done with mothers in inner city Detroit, and the language level was like at a third year college level. And so I told you need to change this. Single mothers who are 18 in Detroit are not going to understand the information that's written in their college level. So, yeah, she thought I was being discriminatory, but like that. I shouldn't just assume that people have it. I said, well, I think overall, and obviously there could be some people living in Detroit who have it, but overall we want to look at like who is the, average population that we have. Okay, written in lay language. Okay, so there's the first paragraph is an introductory sort of information that says who's conducting the study. If you are a student, you have to say that you are completing the study as part of the requirements for your doctoral degree, master's degree, class, whatever it is. And you have to include the name of your researcher. So you would say, I am conducting a study as part of my degree for a PhD in whatever, and I'm working at the direction of Dr. So-and-so.
What if it's not for your degree? You still have to do that?
Yes, if you're working under somebody else, yeah.
Even though it's not part of the degree requirements?
Well, what are you doing it for? Can you do it?
Well, if we're just doing research just for publication, it's not part of the dissertation, it's not part of thesis.
Are you working in somebody else's lab? What department are you in?
Psychology.
Oh, okay. A lot of times people will say that they're working with somebody because the faculty member is signing your thing. So obviously you're not going to say that there's a degree, but you can say, that the research is being conducted by yourself and Dr. So-and-so from the Department of Psychology, something like that.
What if we do research in another country where there's no IRB concern, but we need to get the dissertation done here, or we will just use different subjects rather than the US?
In another,
For example.
then you need to actually get international. There's an appendix for international research, and that's like that takes a long time because you have to get translations, and then you have to get back translations. So that will probably take longer, and that will probably be a full term degree. You do. Yes, if you are going to another country, there's a whole different set of regulations for international research. It's a requirement of the federal government and the university. For example, we had somebody. There are people who have gone from I think this person might have been from psychology. I can't remember exactly. Who did go to China and did some research there, and she had to get IRB approval, and we needed it translated. And she also needed, did some standardized tests. So we had to look. She had to make sure that she gave us a copy of the informed consent, so it has to be translated into Chinese, and then someone who spoke Chinese and English has to translate it back, because if it was just in Chinese, we wouldn't even know what they were saying. And it can be really expensive, so we try and find somebody like on campus, who can translate or something. But if you are doing international research, it takes way longer.
And the whole point of all this exercise is to make sure the research is ethical, right?
Correct, and to make sure that the people who are your subjects are protected.
Well, that
Yeah,
goes
yeah,
right to the
right,
same
yeah,
thing.
yeah.
So even if it's somebody in a foreign country, if I want to do a survey, or if I want to do a survey of people that are in Bangladesh that are, making clothes, I have to make sure that my survey's not contributing to their whatever injustices they might be suffering, even though it's international.
It is, and part of it is, if you're doing something in another country, we really have to, and there are people who work for the federal government who know like a lot of stuff about what goes on in other countries. Now, if you're doing educational research, you're not going to be in the middle of the jungle somewhere, but we have had people who have gone to other countries where they are like in the middle of nowhere. And they don't know the people, so they have to go in and they have to establish rapport with those people and make sure they're not being coerced. And You know, people might not even know what research is. So there's a lot, depending on what you're doing, that goes into international research.
Does the IRB committee take responsibility for the methodology of the research? Because is it only strictly ethical, or can it sometimes sort of pass the boundary and tell that this is not right, this is not the right method?
Okay, the only way that that would come into play is if it was something that would not answer the research question, which is the example I gave earlier, where the person's methodology didn't really answer the research question. So yes, part of the IRB is to make sure that there's good scientific design. But if it's like, you know, you're going to use A and I think B is better, but both are acceptable, then no. I mean, sometimes people will ask questions, especially not so much. You guys are all grad students. Not so much with you, but with undergrad students who really don't know a whole lot about the world, let alone human subjects research. They just come up with these projects that the methods just are not close to what they should be doing. But for the most part, we don't do that unless it's something that's gonna increase the risk. And we might tell people, like, whatever you're doing really is putting people at more risk. And if you did, you know, this instead, that would be something that would minimize the risk, where you could still answer your research question, but it's maybe doing something a little bit different.
So if we have a research question or hypotheses that we mention in the application and it requires people to fill out surveys, can we also throw on like 6 extra questionnaires that doesn't appear to be readily relevant to the research question?
No, why would you do that?
Can we admit that it's an exploratory study and get away?
Well, do the surveys have to do with your question at all? They have to. Everything that you do has to have something to do with your research question. If it doesn't, you should not be including all that stuff. Yeah, you can't just say, "Oh, I'm going to just try all this," because while you're filling out the survey, can you do all this? Well, then you can't do that. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Other questions?
We're supposed to clear out of this room at 8:30,
Okay.
and I really want to see the IRB net, the website
Okay,
stuff.
all right,
I mean,
you guys all have this on. Let me just make sure. I mean,
Well,
most of
let's-
the stuff is just what's in the consent.
I just want to make sure that the group here, you guys want to see the website stuff? I want to see
Yeah,
that.
okay. Okay, this is if there's a waiver, just let me show you this other
Okay,
little
yeah,
thing.
yeah.
There are some times where you can say you're not gonna give consent. George's example about doing a survey online is one, and there's an appendix to fill out to say you waive consent. And it's either, it has to be minimal risk, and that consent document would be really the only place where their name would be. So that's an example when you ask for a waiver.
That's what I'm going to do, right? Or that's what I hypothetically would do, right?
Correct, yes, that's what you do that. Okay, but now you're gonna do it retrospectively. Okay, this has to do with assent, or people are decisionally impaired.
So what is the age for assent? It's 12?
No, you have to do, you mean what, the lower age, the higher age?
No, the age that we have the parents to consent.
If they're under 18,
18.
yeah, because that's the age in this state. I mean, if the age is different in a different country, then you go by that country, if you're going to another country. Okay, there's a pre-review before we even see it, that people in the research office do, and they just check to make sure you have city training, and they sort of go through it. This stuff we already saw. This has to do with the continuing review, so it's a maximum of 1 year. You have to have amendments if you change anything. If something happens that's not supposed to, you fill out this adverse event forms. These are the continuing review, so it's good for 1 year. And the event part we talked about. You guys can look at this. I would be happy to come back and talk to you again. If you wanted to have some groups, I would be happy to meet with people where we could, you could look at each other's applications and sort of give each other feedback. Again, that's one of my goals is to, help students. I actually personally feel that it's more efficient to work with students because students will do things the way they are versus someone who's been here for, 30 or 40 years and stupid IRB, they can't tell me what to do. So that's part of my purpose of being here. I probably shouldn't have said that.
We can edit that out, TV.
Yeah, we can. But I mean, it's your research that's going to be held up if you guys don't know what's going on. So I think it's really important to.
That is an amazing amount of material. Thank you so much. I mean, I really just a quick round of applause while we wait for her to get the website. I really do want to see the website because I think the hands-on stuff is going to come into play, and I don't want to overstay my welcome if the cleaning people come in here and kick us out. So, actually, I don't want to get caught with food in here. We will edit that out. And you know what? While she's setting up the website, why don't you go ahead and eat whatever fruit you're going to eat and drink whatever beverage you're going to drink while you can.
Okay, I just looked up the computer.
And you're going to grab me one of these too.
George, I just how do I get to like right in IRB? Oh, it's there. Oh, I'm sorry.
I know it's
It's the
welcome to our world. Welcome to my
plastic.
I mean, maybe we can do this because I think if we could bring people
Right, right.
complimentary
Yeah.
food.
Yeah.
How are you?
I'm fine. Yeah. And it would be helpful if we did that if people, if they wanted to. Machines. Yeah. Okay. I like switching paper. Okay.
No, not yet.
I have it.
Do you This is about birthday.
I
No
always
idea.
hate
Yeah, it's just no idea. Yeah, well,
just summarize the draft and then come up with this. I know I have some of my comments. Okay, so on this page, you can see that there are all the applications. So there's step-by-step instructions for how to use IRBNet. These are the applications. I will open one of those up for people who have not seen.
Those are all the ones we have to do in order to receive the training.
No, it depends what you're doing. You only do some of them. So if you're doing an exempt, something that's exempt,
Okay.
okay, it's a Word document. It tells you all the stuff you should apply. And we just changed these forms. We didn't download it, but there's like check marks and stuff, so it's a lot easier for you to understand. And this is what it looks like. So see, there's these little gray boxes that fillable boxes. Those are the things that you can't make changes with trade changes. You can't do other colors. You can only do capital letters or regular font. So these help you decide if they're exempt. And then these are the categories that you would look. So you want to look at the categories and see, where do you think it falls. And then you just go through and fill out the application. Okay, that's if you think it's exempt. Okay, and then, again, you look at it and it could be exempt or maybe it's not. Maybe it's expedited, maybe it's not, maybe it's subject to research. This is the expedited one. The expedited cohort. So again, there's a list of what you would attach. This information is the same. And then these are the categories starting here for expedited. So, clinical studies. Most of this stuff has to do with medical information. This one about biological specimens for non-invasive. This, again, hair, nail clippings, those kind of things. Collection of data through non-invasive procedures. You might do that. We do that a lot in physical therapy. They're non-invasive procedures. We're measuring how strong they are. We're measuring EMGs, those kind of things. This is research involving existing data. I would say that most of the things that we do fall into one of these two categories, these categories 6 and 7. And like I said, there's a category 8 and 9, but those are for continuing reviews. Where, for example, if you collect all your data, the study's only open because you're doing data analysis. That would be one of those other categories. Okay, if your study is more than minimal risk, then you have to explain, it's more than minimal risk. And then it's the same application, but it would go to full board. Okay, this is a continuing review. That one I'm not going to open up. This is an authorization agreement. So this is if you're doing research somewhere else and you want them to be the IRB of record, we would fill this out, or if they wanted us to be the IRB of record. Okay, and then these are all things, additional key personnel. If you have more than 10 people helping you with your research study, there just isn't enough room in the form. So we would add more people. You can see here's one for international research. If you're using deception, which in psychology they do that, sometimes they might have a confederate who's really pretending to be somebody that they're not, like it's part of the research, and then they have to debrief people after. These two are for either waiver or alteration of consent, where you're not getting consent at all, or waiver of documentation of consent, where you're giving them the consent, but they're not signing their name, which is what you do in the survey. Research with children, just impaired, U.S. prisoners. There's one for internet research, this HIPAA waiver authorization is if you're using medical records. FDA regulated products, again, I think we've had maybe one, maybe two studies that have to do with FDA products, so we don't get a lot. Waiver of parental permission, this is the assurance of city training. This authorization form, again, this has to do with the sorts of things, disclose public health, private health information. A checklist for IRB application submissions. So if you look at that, it'll tell you all the stuff. And this, you don't have to hand this in, this is more for you to sort of keep track of what you're handing in. This is the conflict of interest form. This is the one that I said that you have to fill out for every application. So see, it gives a conflict of interest, a financial conflict of interest. This is all the information, and this is what the disclosures have to do with. And most of the time, people don't have conflicts of interest here. This is the event reporting, so if something happens that's not supposed to. This is the form you fill out, and you're basically, these are definitions. You're talking about what kind of problem was it that you didn't expect to happen. You're gonna, describe it, what happened, and then probably one of the most important things at the end of this is this corrective action plan. So basically, you need to say, what are you gonna do to keep the same thing from happening in the future? This is an amendment form. This is that special permission. Did the person leave who's that special permission? So this is if you're not an OU faculty member, that person would fill this out when he gets approved by the research office. That's another authorization, and then these are the templates.
Would that include a doctoral student?
No, it's because your faculty advisor has to be. So that's why I'm saying if you had someone who was a faculty advisor who wasn't a faculty member, then they would have to fill that. Yeah, no, you are a student, so you're okay. Okay, so this is the template for informed consent. So you can see, you just have to fill in the parts that are in red. Or it tells you, what you're supposed to do. Like, for example, you're going to give a brief summary of background and rationale for the study, and then say what the purpose is, who can participate. So these are all the elements that have to be there that we talked about. And this is where you're talking about the procedures. So you have to say what the people are doing, how long it takes. And if there's pieces to it, you have to have all the pieces. So I might do something where I'm having people do some kind of exercise program at home. They're going to come in every month for an hour. So I have to tell them the actual thing that I'm doing, that I'm measuring, is going to take an hour, but the whole study lasts 3 months or 3 years or 2 months or whatever, because they have to keep coming back. So you're giving them the sort of micro duration and the macro duration. How long are you going to be in the study? When can they stop your participation? Sometimes this isn't applicable. Like if someone's filling out an online survey, obviously that part's not applicable because you're not going to find them while they're filling out the survey and say, stop. Okay, how many people will be participating in the study? We ask for that, risks or discomforts, what happens if you get injured. So, and again, a lot of times this is not applicable, so you can just take it out of your study. Benefits, what are the alternatives? And again, most times people take this. You may choose not to participate. What are your rights? And this is the part where I talked about where you say it's voluntary. You can leave the study at any time. You can choose not to participate in certain parts. Unless, again, that's an important part of the study that you would ask them to leave the study. And this is the part where I was talking about that it's not going to affect their future relationship with the university, the researcher, whoever's your, the psychology department, whoever's your research advisor, and any other institutions. If you're doing it at a school or a company or whatever, it won't affect.
Do we download these files?
You do,
And then
yeah, and then you
change them?
attach them.
And now let's, God forbid we had to do 2 studies.
Yeah.
And we had to do all this. Can we use a prior one, or do these forms change periodically? How does that?
They do change, and we change them to make them clearer. That when we've only been doing IRBNet.
These are just for Oakland, right? These forms.
These forms are just for Oakland, yeah. If you are somewhere else, they have their own forms. They have to have the same
Who
elements.
wrote all these?
What?
Who wrote all that information?
Well, originally, there was someone in the research office who wrote them, and then actually Becky Sanford and Judah and I and this other And this is, this is about the confidentiality. It basically says, every effort will be made to keep the study information confidential. We used to have a whole big thing in there, which is still in the application about that you're gonna lock stuff up and who's gonna have access and the codes will be kept separate and all that kind of stuff. But then if you don't do that, then it's, if you tell people you're doing it and you don't, then you're in non-compliance. You have to report as an adverse event. I don't know if we're gonna go back to putting more of that information in. I don't know that people really pay that much attention to say, well, do we have the code separate? I don't know that people know that. And then this is the stuff about who else can have access to it. And this is the part saying that, you're not gonna use their names, and then what do you do if you have questions, contact I or me for that. If you have questions about the research, they can contact you, email your advisor, and then they sign the consent form. And usually you have to do 2 consent forms. Okay, so you sign it, they keep a copy, so they, know.
Now, if you were gonna make that form for a, let's say, illiterate population or very, very semi-literate, could you
Yeah,
simplify that?
I mean, it's way easier to get your review done if you use this template. But like I was saying, this one study, for example, that was done in a country where the people were illiterate. And so we made it like way simpler because people didn't, they were from another country and it was very remote part. So they changed it. Yeah. So you want to make sure people understand it. But you have to have all the same elements there. You just make it easier to understand. Okay, so if you want to make a new project, you go here to create a new project, and you click on here. Then you would pick Open University, and you put the title and your name and all that kind of stuff. I don't know if it will let me continue.
Can you delete a project once you start it?
You can, yeah.
So,
And until you hit submit, you can go back and forth and look at it every time. Okay, so you do that, it comes up here, it says assemble your document package in addition to adding project documents. So this add new document, so I would go in, I would download the application, I would fill the application out, I would fill out the template, and then I would just start adding documents. Okay, and I can't show you what that looks like after that because then I would be showing you somebody else's.
that's fine.
Can't do that. And you can see this right here. This is how you put the training records. So you can link that to city training, and there's a way to do that, and Judette Haddad does all of that, so she would probably be more helpful telling you how to do that. But and then you can give other people access. So you can go and say you want your research advisor to have access, or you're working with somebody else, if you have somebody who's helping you, and you want everybody to have access, so everybody can go in and download all their own information, their conflict of interest. You give them access to what you're doing.
But at the end, we have to submit in person, not online.
You have to what?
We have to submit all the papers and information, the application papers in person in the office.
No. You do it here. That's why you go in here to add documents, and then it lets you add a document. So see all these things that you're adding?
You have to add all of them?
No. You only add the ones that have to be with your study. So you are doing.
So everything is done online. So I submit online and I ask my professor to sign it online.
Correct. So you send them the application. They type in their name. Okay, let me open an
All of
application.
the subjects,
I'm sorry.
all research subjects. So
They sign the informed consent. That doesn't go in here. Your research subjects, things you keep separately. This is only for the application itself. So when your research subjects sign informed consent, you have to keep those for 3 years. You have to keep your data for 3 years.
do we need to get each person's signature?
Yes.
As you're concerned, even if we have hundreds of the subjects.
Yes. Well, it depends what you're doing. So if you're doing a survey that's online with 100 subjects, then no. But if you're doing some kind of intervention, then yes. Okay, so let me open
It's
this up.
crazy, right?
It is.
It's a lot.
It's a lot of work.
I mean, I know what you mean, it's a lot. It's hard to imagine, if you're gonna do 100 people, and let's say they're from 2 or 3 different countries. And maybe you wanna compare the different countries, different things, right? Then you gotta go get somebody's signature in whatever country, get some signature in the
Yeah,
United States.
it's a lot of work to do this. Okay, so this is the end of the, application. So see, you type your name in here, your advisor types his or her name in here, and then the department chair types their name in here. Okay, and then you close it up and attach it. Okay, so yeah, so you don't have to do this in person, you can do it all online.
And then you answer to me, for example, if you need something else, just send me email.
Correct, yeah, so if something's missing, during the pre-review, so the people in the research office say, you don't have conflict of interest forms for, these 3 people that are helping you with your research, you need to do that. And they kind of do a little bit of an overview of it, things are consistent and those kind of things. And then the IRB members also, we don't check conflict of interest forms or city training or any of that stuff. Our primary job is to look at the risk and benefits and, make sure people are being informed and stuff like that. But if we see something that still doesn't match, isn't consistent, we might still ask questions.
If I wanted to verify, let's suppose I'm doing a study on cybercrime, and I see a Gallup poll. So the Gallup poll says, yes, 25% of the respondents claim to have been victims of identity theft. And I question that poll. And I want to re-poll the same people, I only want an Oakland University study, not the Gallup organization. Do I have to do this?
If you're doing it for research in general.
I want to verify the poll, and I want to publish it in a scholarly journal.
Yeah. How would you even do that?
Contact the same people.
How would you even get those Gallup people?
No, the Gallup people, they go to the phone book, or they just call people up, and they ask a series of questions. They don't do any of this. But if I want to verify their they say they got this confidence level, and these are the results, and I'm going to go double check their work.
Okay,
Because I work for Oakland, unless I go work for a polling company,
that's right, yeah.
I got to go through all that.
You do, yeah. So the federal government doesn't regulate Gallup, so Gallup can do whatever they want.
Yep. I'm just saying, yeah.
That's
So
right.
you were asking a question? Yes. The answer to your question, yes. It's an incredibly large amount. That's why we can't do that kind of research. We can't do polling efficiently. We would never be able to be cost beneficial, right? If we want to find out an election, the universities can't study that. It's too much overhead. Whereas Gallup can do that because they're not regulated that way.
That's right, yeah,
But they could also be unethical.
they could, yes, they could. And
They don't
that's
have an
why
ethics
these are
review
separate.
board
Yeah.
like we do. So that.
So Gallup could do something and they could discover who I am and say I have some skills in my closet and they're gonna tell people.
Or what is that in British newspaper?
The,
What is it called?
Times?
The World or something? Daily, what is it?
Daily Mail is.
Daily Mail, right. So they can go do that and they're not right, they're unethical, right? Wow, that's crazy. I just wanted to ask them if they were victims of cybercrime, but I don't do that.
Well, maybe you would do it with a smaller number of.
No, I think I'll leave that to Gallup.
Okay, that's good. Okay, so there's all this thing, this is the designer page where you add everything. This is what I talked about where you share the project. Okay, so there's a bunch of different ways that you can share it with a person. You can give them full access, which means they can do everything. You can give them write access where they can go in and change things, or you can give them read-only access where you don't want anybody messing around with your application, but you want them to read it and give you feedback. And this is if you want to give them access to, like someone who works at another facility, and then transfer ownership. I don't think you've ever had anything like this. This is how you sign the package. Okay, so there's 2 things to sign. One is the application itself, which I just showed you. So at the end of the exempt application, at the end of the expedited full board application, and those are Word documents, you type in your name. Then you have to sign the package. So all I do is, so I am I might be the principal investigator, so I have to do that, and then your, I'm not sure, I think we just signed it as, I don't see anywhere where the department head has to sign it. I don't think your advisor does, but I would have to find that out. But you for sure go in and you're signing, you're the principal investigator, so you that, and then you sign sign, and then it's electronic to sign. And I don't really do this part, because this is done
Right.
before it gets to me, so if you wanted to know who's supposed to sign it.
This is really-
Yeah, but that's why you share the project with someone, so you're gonna share it with whoever else has to sign it, and then they can go and they just sign it, and then I'll sign it. And then if you wanna submit it, you would submit.
Does the professor have to be the principal investigator?
No, you are, if it's your project,
Okay.
you are the principal investigator, they are your faculty advisor.
Wow, that is something.
Right, and this is, and then you asked about deleting it, this is how you delete it. Okay, send project mail means you're just gonna send mail through IRBNet, that doesn't work as well as it was supposed to. You can look at the project history to see
Hey,
all the
guys,
things that went back
guys.
and forth.
Hey, I hate to be a pain, but this camera is really sensitive. I can't hear her if there's any background noise. It's not, I love that you're talking, believe me, I love it very much, but I want the people who weren't able to make it tonight to be able to hear what she's saying, so, sorry about that.
Okay.
Please, sorry.
The other thing that's really important to, that's really, can be really confusing about this, is that there are projects and there are packages. So the project is sort of the big picture. So a project would be your initial submission. So in your project, when you first submit it, it will be package 1. So it's a 6-digit number, so it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6-1. That means that that's the first package you submitted for that project. Now say later you want to do an amendment, that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6-2. That's a second package, but it has to do with the same big project. And that can be really confusing. So anytime, once you have a project number assigned at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, everything else is submitted as a package. Because all the stuff that has to do with that one project has to be kept together, and that's how IRBNet keeps track of it.
And then Approvi gave us another number, which is the IRB. Is it correct?
No, each project will have an IRB number. Yeah, somebody will give you that number, they'll assign that number, and so you'll have one number, but you always have one project number, but every submission is a different package that has to do with that project number. And really, you do have to go in and play around, because even like I know the big picture stuff, but unless you do this like all the time, you do sort of forget some of the steps, but there are instructions in there that IRBNet, step-by-step instructions, if you go through there, that should help. Again, if there's anything in any of the forms that is totally muddy and we need to change to make clear, please, feel free to email me, Judette or Becky, Seaborg, and, let us know that that doesn't make sense to you all the time. And that's the only way that we know that. Again, it's just like your project. It makes sense to us because we wrote it, but it might not make sense to everybody else. So that's extremely helpful when people let us know what we're doing forms.
That's a great overview.
Okay, do you want to see the city training thing real quick?
How are we doing on time? Okay, let's go for it until they kick us out. We can probably, I guess, keep going. If you have to leave, you have to leave. We're recording this so you can see. I want to see it.